everyone, to this episode of Smarter Sourcing. My name is John Pavia, and today we are joined by Yisa Wong. She is Vice President of Strategic Sourcing for the Fossil Group. Yisa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me today.
And this is a long distance version of Smarter Sourcing here on the East Coast in Connecticut, and you are in
Hong Kong?
Hong Kong. What time is it? 12 hours difference, right? Wherever it is here. Well, listen, thanks for doing this, and I've been looking forward to this interview. So before we get into the meat of this, can you give us a little bit about your background and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. So I started my career in product development and having been in sourcing for over 20 years. So I handle different products across multiple industry, including clothing, jewelry, leather goods, watches. So my career started from Liz Claiborne, is a U.S. clothing company, and then I work at Gap. Later on I was working in Coach, and then finally I moved over to Fossil almost 16 years ago.
So I'm just curious because I have two daughters who both of them are fashionistas when it comes to their clothing, their accessories, the whole thing. Was that you as a little girl? And were you living out your dream, being with all these different brands who make great accessories and great products?
Yes, it was. Because when I studied at the school, I love the fashion. So that's why I choose the fashion industry.
So tell us a little bit how Fossil is organized in terms of your group, because you're in Hong Kong, but they're a worldwide brand. So when it comes to sourcing, the sourcing and procurement, how is it organized?
Actually, our headquarters in Dallas, Richardson. So the Hong Kong is one of the office in the APAC. So we have a warehouse here. So we managing the APAC inventory here, warehouse. And the Hong Kong office also managing all those sourcing procurement works, including China's and other APAC country.
So you started in product development, and now you're in sourcing. So that transition from the functional to the strategic had to be an interesting sort of professional transition for you. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yes. So I started my career from product development. So it was because I was young by that time. So the usually the people who's doing merchandising, we call merchandising usually in Hong Kong. So we're not calling product developers. So we just get into the industry to really understand how the fashion world works. So I just joined the Liz Claiborne company, partner with those design teams and merchandising teams. So from time to time, they will travel over to Hong Kong. So they will have the designer, they come up with design sketches. So we just follow those project developments to work with the supplier. We found a supplier here in Asia. Most likely it was in China by that time. So we partner with them, come up with samples, doing price negotiation until the adoptions, and then we will place the POs and then go ahead, continue to production and to shipment. So that's just like how I spent my career in product developments. And later on, I was moved over to be focused more in sourcing. So the framework is more including not only product development, not only create products, but more about how you select the supplier. So, looking at the company business and really understand, what is at the front end, the brand teams and the commercial team may have an open to buy budget, right? Based on that, what is the key objective they want to achieve. Then from that, we have to look at like on what products they need and what is the factory we want. We need a reliable source, who can make decent products for us at a competitive pricing. So we have to understand the market's course to find right vendor to be, at a vendor base.
So moving on, when made that move to sourcing, was it something that you wanted to do, or was it was a need, and you're like, yeah, I'm open to it? Because most people I have on this program, didn't plan when they were in university that being part of sourcing and procurement was going to be something they were going to be doing for their career. Then they get there and then they end up loving it and they thrive at it. What was your case?
I didn't plan for that, of course, because, by that time I was young, right? So, I get into the industry doing product development, I was happy about it. And then later on, when your career just continue to develop, to be a divisional merchandising manager. So you are looking at like a sections of the business, right? So later on, I also have an outposting program where I work with Liz Claiborne. Luckily, I got a chance, so I outposting to New York. So I work in New York for a year. So from that, I can have a one big step jump to the another area. So it's not only partner with a team, but it's talk about managing a jewelry division by that time. So it was a big learning for me.
So now I'm curious. I don't know if you've spent time mentoring younger professionals or if you teach at all, but it's something that I've done. And so I wonder if you do you often talk to them about being open to taking on responsibilities and roles that maybe take you outside of your comfort zone during their own career path?
I think continue in the next milestone for me will be, I seldom to plan ahead like what will be my next milestone. So I'm just go with the natural flow. So just focus on my work. So but when you handle no matter I handle projects or I handle tasks or whatever you in, I'm just sitting through a little border way like what I can do it and what I can challenge myself a little bit further to see how it works. So probably it may be some things to make me continue improvement, I guess. So if you're asking about like mentoring, so usually, I will work with my team. So to share some of my learning experience with them.
So, so many people I speak with today, what comes up is what's going on, especially anybody who's in this business and is doing it internationally. Tariffs is a major topic of conversation. We'll talk about that. But you've been in this business and have always had to manage through sort of international issues and whatnot, and internet and different pressures that happen at a global level. So first, I'd like you to address that. And is it something that you've sort of become accustomed to because it's something you've been dealing with from day one? Or are we at a time that there's complexities in the work that you do that are completely beyond anything else that you've had to deal with?
I think, as the procurement and sourcing leaders, we have always to be stay ahead of like what's happening in the world, especially nowadays because like last year we have the tariff crisis, right? Nobody expect that it was happen like, and recently, it's a Middle East war, right? So the oil price is going to increase like up and down, and the gold price and the silver price was be very fluctuate in the market, the commodity market. So I think nowadays doing sourcing procurement has to be really understanding what is happening in the market. What is the global economic changes, policy changes. So of course, it would be better if we can prepare for that. So it means like some prevention. Like when we talk about risk mitigation, is to me is more about how you prepare, yourself and prepare when something to happens. Of course, this is not just easy to say something quickly or this not only having the meetings and have a good meetings, but this is something for company they have to have a progress system. So first is you need to have a very solid vendor base, have a very strong sourcing foundation. So you can continue to having a good system, no matter internally or externally, to managing the sourcing activity. So even though if that is any things happens in the world, so at the company standpoint, you still can react to manage the risk and minimize the impact.
So with that said, do you have any good use cases or real life instances where you had that redundancy built in, you had risk mitigation measures in place for when something really actually did happen that had a global impact or regional impact, that you had to kick that plan into action?
Yeah, I think I can share two story I have experienced in my career life. So if the first one is many years ago, so by that times, we relied on by that time I was in accessory world. So that was the case that we relied on a single material supplier as a source, a major source, to using the components of one of our major collection public collections. So, but unfortunately, one day they got a very bad fire accident. So unfortunately, the manufacturers has to be shut down. So this is a big mess for us. So do we have to be considered for the second supplier? So we consider them at one times, but they were not perfect to be adopted into our vendor base, so we haven't really used them. But unfortunately, because the case happened, so we consider to using that secondary supplier. So we immediately common source those items with them. And then of course we hand in hands we have our team to work together with the supplier. So it's not only to take the appeal to them, but we also sending out technical teams to go there, work with them day in, they prioritize the order to them, and then we can turn around quickly around 3 to 4 months. So we're still able to hit that. Of course, some of the delayed on our shipments, but fortunately, we can maintain our newness knowledge. So that's just one of the good experience for us to really understand we cannot rely on a single source, even though it's just a material supplier.
When you think about what's going on where we're at today, not necessarily with tariffs or anything in particular, but how much are you wargaming or game planning now, especially post pandemic, for sort of worldwide crisis that impact your supply chain?
Post pandemic, so I was saying that the pandemic times it was a really bad disruption. So because the supplier almost shut down everything. Of course, no first, no people context, right? So we just everybody's work from home. So that's why the impact is they shrink down the production line. So probably they let go some of their workers or some of the workers under holiday. So when the whole things restart, of course at the very beginning still okay because the order and the shipment is not heavy loaded. But after everything restart, like 3 to 6 months, the importer, the buyer side will continue placing the order. They want to do a catch up. So that's why it create a huge impact of the supply. They got a lot of pressures, so they have to we hire the workers. They want to expand production line to go back to the monthly capacity, so they can digest those all the requirements, right? No matter that's production plannings and all this. So but it was a big pressure for the supplier at that time.
And I ask this question because when I talk to other folks that, I'm learning, it's amazing what some companies are doing, obviously with AI, but using AI to sort of get a peek around the next corner to see what is that next potential, you know, disruptive event when it comes to supply chain disruption. Are you guys using AI in that way?
Right now, we're looking at this opportunity. Of course, everybody is looking at the AI for sure. But how we work and day in and day out the everyday life. So we still need to pay attention, like what we can do and what we cannot do. Yeah, I think people is trying to understand what AIs can bring us in to enhance the efficiency, right? But at the same time, we also want to understand what limitations. So what the security, standards and boundary we have to set to make sure that, if we introduce the AI functions to all the employees, so what does it mean? Or even though not all the employees, but specific teams, right? We need to give a very clear guidelines to them, like how they can use it. So for sure, the company is actively looking at the opportunity to using AIs to enhance and improve efficiency. That's for sure. And if we talk about the sourcing and procurement, to me, I'm looking at some of the challenges to really using AIs to improve this, to find out the opportunities about any cost efficiency. You know, how can we using AI to possibly manage our business contract or some of the agreements? So that's some area we continue to looking at. That it may be too early to comment on how we use AI at this moment.
Yeah, and I think, I do think sourcing is one of those areas in business where when you take it outside of pencils, pens, notebooks, light bulbs, and you're really talking about strategic sourcing, because those vendor relationships are so important with your key vendors. I think it's one of those areas where, and when I speak, especially to younger people also coming up through the ranks, whether it's in sourcing or some other industries, but especially here, the relationship you build with those your key suppliers, that's never ever, in my opinion, going to be something that AI can do. And one of the things I worry about is that this younger generation. My kids had 4 kids; they're all 20s and 30s, and it's amazing what you can now automate a bot to do. But I'm always stressing the importance of effective communication and having those real relationships with key suppliers.
Yeah, sure. Of course, I totally agree because AI can enhance our efficiency, but it doesn't mean that they can, replace any relationship, business relationship. So relationship is more about the trust, the partnership. We have to know each other. So the people has to be honest. We have to continue to maintain a transparency with our suppliers. So support, how I see it is no matter I work at different company, I treasure the supplier because supplier is the sourcing, it's the essence for sourcing. So they can, if you hit any, global events, macroeconomic changes. So I believe that if you have a trust reliable supplier, so they can be your co-pilots to go through those turbulences.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about measuring success, it's one of those things that's hard to measure. But when you have an event, and whether it's global or whether it's local, regional, and you built that relationship, invested in that relationship, and then that relationship pays off because some supplier steps up when you really need him to and goes beyond, the call of duty, beyond the terms of the contract. That's something you can't really measure, quantitatively, but it is tangible. So sticking with that theme, that building those relationships, and the quality of those vendor relationships, it's a hard thing to measure. But when one of your key suppliers comes through in a crunch, and you say to yourself, I mean, that's why you invest in these relationships. But in your world and with your team, what are those things that are your KPIs, and how do you measure success?
Oh yes, of course. So we have a robust systems to measure the supplier performance. Different company will have a different name. So sometimes they will call it a supplier like scorecard program. So we have 10 to 14 different KPI. So we outlined with our supplier and our internal cost functional partner. So usually the company measures supply performance, including operational side, including on-time delivery, budgets and production meet time. So, and also, overall, we will measure our supplies, customer service. So, meaning that based on day in, day out communication, so they respond in a fast turnaround time. And then we will measure the R&D capability, how they handle our development projects. So, they bring in the innovation idea to the company so we can continue to create our innovative products to be rationing into the marketplace, right? So, also, most important for sourcing is talking about costing, right? So, we will measure our supplies performance based on the costing goal of, we will carry out some of the pricing exercise first. So, are they able to hitting our target price? So, this is also one of the KPI. So, including everything, this will be around like 10 to 15 different KPI, a different aspect.
Do you have an example of something that's no longer a KPI because you said to yourself, I mean, you've been doing this a while, and you got to a point where you said, you know what, that's actually dumb that we measure that, and it shouldn't be a KPI. And because I've had this conversation before with sourcing professionals where they talk about something that maybe too much importance is placed on a KPI, where they got to the point where they said, we'll continue to measure it, but it's overplayed.
Yes, of course. So KPI is KPI, of course, because we are doing business, right? So this is important for a company to really understand, what is the supply can bring the value to us. But at the same time, the building the business relationship is also important. So it's more about like how you deal with your suppliers together. So and go through all those years hand in hands to go through and tackle different challenge, no matter what was the market change. So from time to time, you will build that relationship which cannot be measured.
So in your world, Fossil is a phenomenal brand, but it's maintained its standing throughout throughout the world in what the things it sells, the things it makes. How important do you think it is for your group to have an understanding of or an awareness of what the competition is doing? And I don't mean just the competition, what they're selling and what they're selling against you guys, but getting out there and whether it's from a competitor or someone else that's in the same industry or relevant industry to understand new techniques, new strategies that they're employing, and to then bring some back to your group.
Yeah, I think in the industry, no matter which company you work for, but very easy because we are not just sitting at the office to running like sourcing procurement process or system, but which is from time to time we go out to meet with the supplier. So we will go meeting a new factory, new manufacturer. So we will do factory visits. So we tour around the production line. We really understand their factory setting. So what type of machine they are using, what type of material they're using, what was the manufacturing method. We will discuss all the time with different eating different people, discuss like what is the best way you can enhance the production efficiency, right? Where we talk about automation. So what is the available automation they can present think about? So we continue to encourage our suppliers and no matter that's it's like a finished good supplier or pure supplier. So we continue to encourage people to think big. So what's the new technology available in the industry? So they will continue to try different things. So some of the machine could be they just invented by themselves. So they have a new tooling, they have a new machine for different part of the manufacturing process. So that will become their unique capability. So I think to really understanding our competitor, first you have to understand what available capability in the industry and who is doing good in the industry and what is the specialty they have in house.
Your product, I would imagine your experience in product development comes in very handy at that point.
Oh yes, of course. It did help me quite a lot because you understand how to create products. But even though for those people, if for those new younger generation that they try to think about like would that be a sourcing is good career for them, I also encourage the peoples to think about even though you're doing sourcing, but you have to really understand the industry. You have to understand the product. So just for example, my experience, I have been handled different prototype in my career life. But every time, even though I may not be really familiar with that products, but my interesting is really want to understand how the factory make the products. So from time to time, once you learn more, once you know better, so you will very naturally to be understanding how this industry works. So the product knowledge and to understand the manufacturing process, to understand your supplier capability is very important as a sourcing leader.
And let's stick with that for a second, and especially when it comes to the younger folks coming up through the ranks. If you were to be speaking to, someone who's either just started in sourcing procurement, or is in school and thinking about making that their vocation, what would you tell them about the importance of data, and understanding how to analyze data and using, and I think maybe more importantly, how to use those data points in everything they're doing?
Oh yes, so data point is very important sourcing area because we manage so many costing, right? So you have to understand how it come up based on the product cost and what is the area, so we can have more cost efficiency. So what is the improvement you need, and how at certain level of understanding, the sourcing folks has to really understand the costing, how a products combine different components to become a product cost. That's as important. So being said that you will manage different type of the data. So you have different data points. And at the end, how you generate those data points to be able to give you an overview of what does it mean to you. So then you will find out that what's the area you have improvement, you need to enhance the efficiency and what you can create the value for the company and for the team. So that's why to handle the data is also very important. One of the key, I would say that one of the key skill set for sourcing folks.
What's been an aha moment for you in the last 12 months, 24 months, where it's been a real eye opener compared to the way you used to do things, 5, 10, 15 years ago?
So last year, I think everybody just was impacted by the tariff event. So we're in the same situation. So that's why. But I'm happy that because I have the team, so they are very good on managing the data and the take. So and I'm lucky because they are very committed team player. So that's why I only have a lean team, but they still can outperforming compare with a master team using a legacy system. So they turn everything around and can provide very accurate data informations to the company and to the team. So we quickly turn around and get through those tough challenge.
Let's talk about stakeholder relationships. How much do you encourage your team to spend time with the actual stakeholders to really understand, where they're trying to go to?
Yeah, sourcing has a different interaction with different cross-functional partner. So because sourcing at the very beginning, when you select those suppliers, so we need to have a very good relationship with our product development partner. So because they create the products, right? So we have to understand what through the product development partner, we understand what the brand use needs, adjust the business need, what our customer needs based on the product wise. And then from that, so we can consider which type of supplier we select. This is good for the company or good for the business. So that's why the number one stakeholder will be our product development partner, and then on the operational side, we will be a good partner with our supply planning team. So the all management team, and also internal, we still have our engineering team. We have a quality control, quality assurance team. So this is on the operational side. So sourcing has to be on working with different team and different key stakeholders and leaders.
So I want to finish with this. What advice do you have for someone who is in sourcing, coming up through the ranks, they're with an international brand, team is spread out all over the place, and you're not just in a working for a company that is in one section of I'll call it, in this case the U.S., but you're interacting and you're managing an operation that is global. What advice would you have for that person?
I think we need to be very flexible. First is to deal with the time zone differences. So, because within APAC we have it will be easier for managing the time zone. But if we work with the US at the same time, sometimes we have meetings or phone calls with the Europe team. So the time differences will have to manage. The number one thing is we need to have flexibility to deal with the time differences, right? So the second thing is we work with the culture backgrounds people. So we need have to optimize to be respect each other to really understand, that happens, the culture a little bit. So US and Hong Kong and EMEA, I feel like it's easier because very common international, trade and work, we in this is cadence, right? But sometimes when you work with some of the supplier partner, they may locate, of course, in China will be easier because we Hong Kong, China is more close, right? But if you work with some supplier, they have a factory in Cambodia, they have a factory in Burma, they have a factory in Thailand, so they have their culture. So differences happens. So sometimes you work for the production line, so they may need to pause a little bit for a 5 minute trading time. So we have to respect that this could happen. So this is good because sourcing is much more not only looking at the data, looking at the process and the system that it will provide a good chance for us to meet in different peoples, working with different stakeholder and different organization at home.
So as we're talking today, there was an announcement last night that I saw this morning, I guess, that China is now taking a look at some kind of reciprocal action with respect to tariffs vis-a-vis the U.S. So you don't have to tell me anything that's national security secret or anything proprietary, but what does that do? What's the protocol now for you and your team, if any, with this recent development that's just now literally 2 hours old? And I don't know if you've read through it, but do you then have is the protocol to have a meeting to understand how it's going to impact the business, or you just roll with it?
Yeah, I think we have to be alert about the situation and how the geopolitical situation further develop in this year and next year. So I believe most of the schools and leaders looking at this. So what if something really bad happens? So we have to react immediately, including how we allocate our productions. So that's as important. Of course, some of the industry or some of the different industry may have different handling and different methodologies based on the social models.
Understood. Well, listen, this has been great. We're out of time, and I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope we can check in with you maybe next year and then continue the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you, Yisa. Thank you to everybody watching on YouTube and all of our listeners on the other platforms. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Smarter Sourcing. Take care.